Finally getting around to a new episode of my life, number 6. This one I dedicate to my sister because it is her birthday today. And just like with my mother, I always struggled remembering my mother's birthday, which is September 11. And now, because of the terrorist attack of 9/11, I can never forget it anymore. For my sister, I was always confused whether it's September 21 or September 23. But it's actually September 23, which is the first day of spring. I mean, fall or autumn, the last day of summer. My sister is about 6.5 years, younger than me. And I think that our kind of relationship started off as a big joke. I think I always joked with her that she came about because we needed a few extra points in order to be given this apartment by our Communist Party and by our parents' company. You see that the system of former Yugoslavia was that all workers were entitled to free housing provided by the government and the company that they worked for, but depending on the point system. So let's say if you're a single person, you have this many points. If you have a job, you have that many points. You have a better job, that many points. If you're married, if you have one child, if you have 2 children. And we lived in this one room for about 7 years. And we tried for so long, our family tried for so long to get this apartment. And even though both of my parents had jobs and I was around, we were still missing a couple of points. So at some point, my father decided to get some extra schooling. So at night, he took some courses, and I remember to this day, in order for him to study, he would close himself into this big wardrobe, and he would use a flashlight to read the book, Marxism, and some other things, to become an engineer, right? It was such an inspiration to me because, I remember falling asleep with just like a stream of light coming from the wardrobe where my father was hiding inside and studying at night, to pass the test. And he did it. He finished his college and became an engineer, and that gave him extra points, but we were still missing the points towards the apartment. I remember one of his final tests was in the capital of former Yugoslavia, Belgrade, which is now the capital of Serbia, and it was the first time 2 of us took a train to Belgrade together, and we took that train in which you can sleep. Wow, it was the most adventurous thing ever. My father and I taking an overnight train to Belgrade so he can do the test, which he nailed, and again further inspired me to become the student that I have been my whole life, because I realized if my father could finish his engineering degree in the freaking wardrobe in the closet, he came out from the closet as an engineer, then I can do anything else. So the extra few points was my sister. As soon as she was born, I think 6 months later, less than that, or like a year or something like that, we were in that beautiful 2-bedroom apartment. In many ways, my sister completely saved us. She came at a time when our, family was definitely struggling. My parents were in that room for 7 years. I was about to reach, the age of going to elementary school. I was no longer a child. It was impossible for them, to do anything with me in that one room. It was just not a conducive environment to anything normal or healthy. So 3 people staying in one room was just too much. And then later 4. But luckily because of her, like, we got the apartment. So she became that kind of bright light. She became that like that the star that show us the way. She became our savior. We cherished her because of that. And not just because of that. She was probably the cutest baby, first of all, I have ever seen. She was so cute. She was so kind. She was there was something angelic about her. And to this day, she's like that. She's so giving. She's understanding. You can approach her with absolutely any problem. You can ask her for anything. Man, there's an expression in Bosnian language that she would give you, the sweater of her back, or like the skin of her back. And that's exactly how my sister is. Like, you can just go up to her and ask her for anything, and she'll help out. Seriously, kudos to that. Not many people can be that understanding, can be that open-minded, open-hearted as she is. Absolutely beautiful human being. I'm so proud, to have her as a sister. And I'm so happy for the 5 points she brought us, and that she saved us from that misery. Somehow when she came, our luck changed, And we were a really lucky family until, of course, the war happened and all that stuff. Nothing is forever. Happiness and misery, everything has an expiration date. So because we moved to that new apartment, both of my parents had to work extra hard to support us. And a lot of times I was left in charge of my sister. I became a baby sister, whatever. Babysitter. Baby sister. And it was such a glorious job to me, honestly. To be left in charge of another human being, and a cute one as that, was just something amazing. I think that I became the best friend with my sister, even though she was so small and she couldn't really do much. Somehow there was this unspoken, relationship that we have, the connection that she would pretty much do whatever I wanted. She really looked up to me. I was her big brother, and I really loved her too, and she loved me unconditionally. Whatever I would say, whatever I would want to do, she would be okay. Every time she was in a bad mood or maybe crying or something, I was able to make her laugh, and I think that's why there was a connection there. But I think it goes more than that, as we say in Bosnia, that blood is thicker than water. That definitely said something. I remember one afternoon, my parents went shopping. They had to do, some basic shopping for food and whatnot. And they said, look, we'll be gone for an hour. And we think you're big enough now to take care of your sister. She was just fed, her diapers were changed. She's sitting in this walker, walking around, having fun. You don't have to do anything. And I was like, yeah, man, for an hour, of course, I can do it, We were sitting in, I think it was my room. She was in that walker, just walking around the room. We were watching TV. It was awesome. Again, to be left in charge of another person is a powerful thing. Seriously, being a babysitter is a glorious job. Not many people take it seriously or understand it, but it gives you a certain advantage over anybody else. You feel like you are, a god in somebody's eyes, because these children look at you as this omnipotent person. By the way, I have heard so many horrible stories from my friends about their own experiences with babysitters, and I can see that for sure, that feeling of power was something that I also experienced myself, because in many ways you feel that You have the power over this human being. You can do good or you can do harm as well. It's a very tricky situation, and I think it's a true test of humanity. I'm glad I passed it, you know, somewhat. Definitely wasn't the best brother, definitely wasn't the best babysitter, and definitely made some horrible mistakes. But overall, I guess it was okay. However, I have heard of horrible stories that happened in babysitting, so I'm glad that we both survived that. Back to the story. We were sitting, just relaxing. I was, doing the peekaboo. She was laughing, walking around in the walker. And I felt I wanted to pick her up a little bit and just hold her and kiss her, because she had these beautiful, cheeks, man. I love them so much. And, I just picked her up, just danced with her a little bit, kissed her a few times. She used to, grab my hair and pull a little bit back then. I had hair a long time ago. And, of course, after a while, I was, put her back. And as I was putting her back, because her legs were she was moving her legs up and down, I ended up putting both of her legs to one hole of the walker. And then I ended up dropping her into it in such way that she got stuck. So now I couldn't pick her up, or I couldn't, push her down anymore, because she was just there, and she was touching the ground with both of her feet, but she was not comfortable. I tried to pull her up, but as I would pick her up, I would pick up the whole, walker with her, and it was impossible for us to for me to remove her from there. So I started panicking. She was still okay. She was still, being somewhat comfortable, but she couldn't move. She couldn't do anything really. So, not knowing what to do, I just decided to leave her there as it is and just go out. So I went out in front of my apartment, sat there at the stairs, and kind of started crying. I assumed this really sad puppy look. Luckily my parents came back home, tired, of course, carrying bags. You know how it is to go shopping, my goodness. A married couple goes shopping, divorced comes back so many times. Shopping, I remember in South Korea there was this big department store that had a sign, "Shopping is relaxing." My God, in my experience and in my parents' experience, it was always hell. Nevertheless, these two poor, tired, people are coming up the stairs carrying all these bags, and they see me with this puppy look, and they said, "What's wrong, Eldin? Are you okay?" "I'm fine," and I'm a little bit sad. "Why are you sad?" "Well, my sister got stuck in the walker and I can't do anything about it, so I feel sad for her." My father goes "What the, what, why are you pretending to be sad? Why didn't you tell us immediately what the problem was?" So he ran inside, and my actually mother stayed there to kind of, to calm me down, because I was sad, of course. Luckily, my father went in, fixed my sister if she was okay and everything. And, to this day, really, I have been apologizing for the 5 points and the walker story. Luckily, my sister has forgiven me for both. So I really thank her for giving me an opportunity to learn about babysitting, to learn about a responsibility of caring for another human being who solely depends on you. I mean, seriously, I understood the concept of power right then and there. And not to take away from this beautiful video, but in many ways I can realize now why certain people end up abusing the people they love in similar situations. Power is a very, very, very dangerous thing. Without control, it can lead to so many problems. This is why it's so important to have certain control, and that nobody should have any kind of power on their own without the control of somebody else. Absolute power corrupts. Absolutely, of course. Anyways, thank you so much, my dear sister. First of all, for the 5 points, and second of all, for teaching me how to be a good human. I really thank you for that. One of the saddest expressions or stories my sister ever told me was the fact that she said, for years my brother was a red telephone. Because I left my home when I was 15 years old, and then I came back when I was 25 because of the war and everything that happened. So for 10 years, I lived away from my family, and I traveled the world. I've done all kinds of things. I was in a rock and roll band. I was in the army. I became Canadian citizen. A lot of different things happened. For several years, we could not even talk to each other because of the war. There was no communication. And later on, when the communication was established again, all I could do was call here and there. And, she was about 7 years old when I left, and was about 14 or almost 15 when I came back. So when I came back, she was at the age that I left. And every time we talked to each other, she, looked up to me ever since childhood, being a bigger brother. She kind of expected that I would somehow maybe come back, save her, from the war that they lived through, and from after the war, from being left alone with just her parents and all the problems that they faced, again, during the war and after the war. But I never did. I kind of was too busy living my own life. I was too young. I was exploring different things. A lot of times I was way too, I would say, drugged or stoned or drunk to even care. I suffered with my own, PTSD and my own trauma from the war and everything else, the whole emigration experience. And I was young and foolish. I mean, honestly, I was having so much fun during those years, even though my life was always in danger. But the reality is that everything was an escapism, because I really could not deal with everything that happened. So I became so distant. Nevertheless, somehow, every time I needed saving, every time I needed a mirror or true advice or a true friend, I would reach out towards my sister. And even as a child, I felt she was more mature, she was more aware and funnier, definitely. That's one of the greatest things about her. She has an amazing sense of humor, which she doesn't show, but very realistic. So, because of, I guess, of our mutual upbringing, the parents and the DNA, the experience, the universe, she was there always, and she would be a perfect person to ask for advice. Even later on during Corona time, during my divorce time, when I got kids and everything, I would call up and ask for these things, and she would be like, yeah, I've been through that. I dealt with it, and this is how I survived. And every time I would, start talking about something that would bother me at that time, which is when I only reached out. I would only reach out when there was a problem in my life. She would be there and she would be telling me, yes, I've already dealt with it. Is it as if we've had the same paths and we live the same life on 2 different continents, in 2 different time zones, in 2 different bodies? And in many ways, she paved the road towards our experience. And, I always thought of myself as this world traveler who's seen everything, done everything. Yet my sister, who never left our hometown or our apartment, has had a richer, more profound life than I have. And she's been there to lead me through my own, to encourage me, to advise, to give me advice, to make me laugh, to sometimes call me up on my own bullshit, which is absolutely amazing. So, my dear sister, thank you very much for being an angel. Seriously. That's the best way I can describe it. From the moment you came to this life, to this day, and to many, many, many more experiences ahead of us, thank you and happy birthday. And to everybody else, see you in the next video.